Hey guys, Phil Kurut, thanks for joining me again. Let's take a look at some government transparency. So I'm looking at the so-called transparency promised by this administration and really our government in general, and it appears that the idea of complete transparency is a little muddy. So last week this video with President Biden and the Prime Minister of India came up in my discussion, and for those who missed it, here it is.
I think what we're going to do is bring in the press. The Indian press is much better behaved than the American press. I got to watch out, they'll knock one another down. And I think, with your permission, we should not answer questions because they won't ask any questions on point.
And as you might expect, earlier this week, the press followed up on that with Jen Psaki.
As he sat down with Prime Minister Modi last week, the president said that the Indian press is better behaved than the U.S. press, and then he advised him not to take questions. Can you explain why the American president was criticizing U.S. reporters in that setting?
Well, I would note first that he took questions on Friday, and he took questions again today. And I think what he said is that they're not always on point. Now, I know that isn't something that anyone wants to hear in here, but what I think he was conveying is, you know, today he might want to talk about COVID vaccines. Some of the questions are about that. He might want to talk about, and some of the questions are not always about the topic he's talking about in that day.
So basically what Psaki says is the president decides what he wants to talk about and what questions he really wants to answer, and frankly, if he wants to answer questions at all. In my opinion, that's not how any of this is supposed to work. Now, when it comes to military strategies and tactics, I support the idea that we don't need to know everything that goes into that, especially prior to the execution of those plans. But when it comes down to how our country is run, how our money's spent, our freedom, those are issues that we deserve complete transparency about. See, as we all know, the president is an elected official, and he should be available to answer any questions the press wants to ask him, whether those are questions or topics he prefers to talk about that day. We're still allowed to ask him those questions, and as our president, he should be willing and able to answer those questions. And speaking about the press, freedom of the press was another topic that got brought up.
Going back to the Friday meeting with the Prime Minister, the president said that the Indian press was better behaved than the U.S. press, but the Indian press is ranked 142nd in the world, according to Reporters Without Borders, for press freedoms. I mean, how does he say that about the U.S. press compared to the Indian press?
Well, I would just say to you that having now worked for the president, serving in this role for 9 months, having seen that he's taken questions from the press more than 140 times, including today and Friday, that he certainly respects the role of the press, the role of the freedom of free press. We ensure that we have press with us, of course, when we travel, that we have press with us for sprays in foreign capitals, and we will continue to. And I think that should speak to his commitment to freedom of press around the world.
Now, when it comes to this, I don't believe that Biden is alone. Most presidents, when it comes to freedom of the press, appreciate freedom of the press as long as that press tends to favor them. But when it comes to taking on the job as president, senator, representative, etc., there has to be some type of understanding that tough questions are going to come your way, and you need to be prepared to answer those questions. They shouldn't have this expectations that they're able to just bat away questions that don't make them look good or questions they would prefer not to take or give answers to. And speaking about not answering questions, here's another question that was posed to Psaki regarding the vice president.
Last week, the White House was hosted for the first time two African presidents, the president of Ghana, President Akufo-Addo, and the president of Zambia. Was anything achieved during those, those meetings, and why were they not received by the president himself, since he received the Prime Minister of India, Japan, and Australia?
Why were they not received in the same way?
Why were they not received by the president himself? They were received by the vice president.
Oh, sure. Look, first of all, I would say that the president is absolutely committed to our relationships with Africa and calling out issues where we have concern, but also looking for places we can work together. Having the Vice President of the United States have these high-level meetings shows the commitment of the Biden-Harris administration to these relationships and to having open and constructive dialogues, and hopefully the leaders who were here will take it as exactly that. I just have to jump. I'm sorry, and I just got to jump around because I got to get some more people. Karen, go ahead.
So Psaki never really answered that question. And why is that? It was a good question. The president has received plenty of other leaders. Why hasn't he received these specific leaders? For an administration that pushes equity, they probably ought to abide by their own rules. So if any of you have been following the hearings regarding Afghanistan, this was a very good question.
The president has not shied away from the historical implications of leaving Afghanistan. He's noted that it was time to end a 20-year war. He has said that he is not going to pass this war on to a fifth president. So given that he understands the gravity and he has framed it in the historical context, I know that you said you're not going to detail private conversations, but can you give us a little bit more of an explanation as to why not? Doesn't the American public, given the historical gravity of that decision, don't they deserve to know who was advising the president who was on the other side of that argument about leaving troops in Afghanistan?
I would say first that what the American public can know and understand is that the president will welcome and take and ask for and push for a range of opinions on every national security decision that he makes. And we're not going to detail those private discussions, private decisions that happen in the Situation Room for the public.
Quite frankly, Afghanistan is still a mess, and the administration just continues to sprint away from it as quickly as possible with as many other issues as they can find. And speaking about other issues, the budget has become a huge issue, and Psaki was asked several questions about that, and here's her response to them.
The White House, have they come to an agreement on a top-line number?
What our objective is, Caitlin, is working to determine what the path forward looks like. We knew that would require compromise. We knew that would require negotiation, and sometimes all sides giving a little bit. That's what we've been discussing, but I'm not going to outline private conversations in more detail. I think what you're going to continue to see for this moment of time, Kelly, is a lot of these private conversations. I would expect you'd see him continue private conversations, and that's how he'll spend his time.
Since you can't talk about the negotiating behind the scenes, what tea leaves should we be looking for to signal where this is going to finally, the plane be landed?
Day-by-day evaluation. Stay tuned.
And here's the point about private conversations. The government is a public entity, and we as citizens deserve to know what's going on, especially when we're talking about trillions of dollars, which are no doubt tied to crap that a lot of us probably wouldn't even support. It's like when they tried to sneak in Planned Parenthood funding into the COVID relief package a while back. Planned Parenthood had nothing to do with the COVID relief packages. And here's what the government and politicians try to constantly do. They try to push out these seemingly beneficial aspects to these packages. They try to push that out to the public while hiding and leaving out all these other factors that they've just kind of stuffed in there that they know the public probably wouldn't overwhelmingly support. It's dishonest, and it's a far cry from any sense of transparency. And to top it off, when they've talked about negotiations regarding these budget packages, all they've talked about are negotiations between progressive Democrats and moderate Democrats. So half the country isn't even getting a seat at the table when it comes to these budget plans.
Well, the political dynamic in the country is different, and in particular in the Democratic Party. Does this president have difficulty relating to or understanding the demands of the progressives in the Democratic caucus? Or do the people around this president who may have served with him in the Senate have difficulty relating to progressives and understanding their needs and concerns?
He's talked with a range of members across the political spectrum in the Democratic Party, I can assure you. I think this is exactly part of the discussion that's being had between members of not of all parties, I should say, but many members in the Democratic Party right now.
Somewhere along the line, our government officials have completely forgotten what they were elected to do. They weren't elected to try to attain celebrity status. They weren't elected to try to make friends with all of these other politicians that they schmooze with. What they were elected to do was to represent the people of the nation, the people of their state, the people of their district, the people of their city. That's what they were elected to do. America currently belongs to the politicians and government entities, and that's never the way any of this was supposed to be. And quite frankly, it's about time the American people take their voices back. And honestly, I'm not sure how that process is going to unfold, but how things are going currently, they're not leaving us with a lot of options. Guys, as always, thanks for joining me again. If you enjoyed this, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.